All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Chapter Book Storytime. We are on chapter 21 today. So, in the last chapter, Madame Esmeralda was putting on her performance at the Grand Oak Resort. Remember, Madame Esmeralda is the stage name of Sandra Santos, the psychic who used to be friends with Mr. Dante Vernon. She was a part of the Emerald Ring when they were kids. So Layla did the opening performance, and now it is Sandra's turn. And she came on stage, and she was kind of like reading things about people, telling them things about themselves that she shouldn't know because she's never met them. And then she summoned spirits into the room, supposedly. She turned off the lights and said, "All right, spirits, now join us." And now she has called up several different volunteers from the audience to be a part of her show. And they are, there was a woman in a dress, a man in a tie, two kids, and then the last three Layla pointed out as being special or suspicious in some way. The first one was this man who's wearing a big fur coat, which she says is odd because it's hot outside, but the room is air conditioned, so could be nothing. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And then the last two are a couple. It's a man and a woman. And there's nothing particularly odd about them, except that Layla recognizes them from somewhere, and she can't quite place it. And she was kind of thinking, did they come into the magic shop? But then she realizes, wait, no, I recognize them from a lot earlier, from a long time ago. So that's interesting. And I kind of wonder, was it so long ago that she recognizes them from the orphanage in some way, when she lived at the orphanage before she was with the Vernons? I don't know. But we're going to have to keep reading to find out. So now, as Madame Esmeralda, aka Sandra Santos, is going to continue her show. So let's see how it goes. Chapter 21. It shall work like this. Madame Esmeralda addressed her 7 volunteers. The spirits who have arrived will approach and secretly reveal details to me. I shall share these details one at a time with you. If at any point one of you feels that I am speaking about someone you've loved and lost, raise your hand and let me know. Okay? The small group nodded at the same time. Madame Esmeralda closed her eyes and began to hum. Hum. Oh, careful, Noodles. After a few seconds, she held up a finger and then pressed it directly into the center of her forehead. She blinked, her eyes opened wide, staring out above the audience as if she could see things floating there. I see a woman. She is neither tall nor short. Her hair is long and brown. She wears an apron. I think she works in a bakery. No, she owns the bakery. A hubbub rose from the audience, but none of the 7 spoke up. Her specialty was rugelach. Her raspberry variety won the blue ribbon at a county fair. She's a kind person, a mother to 2 daughters. She was born overseas, Eastern Europe, and immigrated here as a teenager. The stout woman in the aqua dress on the far left of the group waved her hand and shouted, "That's my booba! There's no doubt about it." Madame Esmeralda strolled over to the woman and said, Your booba? Bubba? I'm not sure. I think it's grandma. I think that's what it means. Your booba says she misses you and loves you." The stout woman held her fingers to her lips as they quivered. Madame Esmeralda placed a comforting hand on her arm. "Do you ever hear birds singing inside your house?" The stout woman's eyes flew open wide. "Yes, I do." "That is a sign your booba is there, visiting you." "I can't believe it. How do you know so much about her?" Madame Esmeralda answered with a smile. She told me. She says to check behind your dresser in your bedroom. There you will find something you've always treasured, but recently misplaced. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. My wedding ring. Oh, thank you, Madame Esmeralda. I'll look as soon as I get home. By the time the stout woman sat back down in the auditorium, she was sniffling, and most of the audience was touched. The psychic turned to the 6 others left on stage. They stared back at her in awe and worry. So, Madame Esmeralda says that she sees this woman, and this, which is a spirit. She sees a spirit, and the spirit's talking to her. And no one else can see or hear this. But this is what Madame Esmeralda says is happening. She sees this spirit woman, she's talking to her, and she says she describes this woman, and the lady on stage in the dress says, yes, that's my grandma. That was my grandma, who I loved very much. And so basically Madame Esmeralda says that she's communicating with these spirits of their loved ones and passing on information to them. Does that make sense? All right, let's see who she talks to next. For the next 20 minutes, she described to the spirits who were visiting the Grand Oak Auditorium. Here's a tall and handsome white man with silver hair and a long forehead. Or, a short brown woman with thick curls is smiling the grandest smile I've ever seen. If none of the volunteers spoke up, she would follow with additional information. I sense the first name might begin with F, or maybe P, or this person was a descendant of someone from South America, I think Uruguay? And then something like, they were a machinist, or they walked with a cane. Or, I think this person might have been quite gassy, a statement that received as many gasps from the crowd as it did guffaws. As Madame Esmeralda gave more and more details about each spirit she was hearing from, eventually one of the volunteers would raise a hand. That's my deceased wife, exclaimed the slouching man in overalls. My grandfather, the boy in the sailor suit blurted out. My Aunt Mabel, shouted the girl in the A-shaped dress. My cousin Gary, whispered the man in the fur coat. Layla felt chills each time Sandra's predictions proved true, but the Misfits kept whispering about her. I bet she researched the histories of these people before the show, Ridley guessed. How? Layla asked. The show was too last minute. If you think about it, said Theo, she is doing exactly what she did for us during dinner the other night. She begins vaguely, luring the volunteers into admitting a connection that they might feel is tenuous at best. Ooh, big words, said Izzy. I know some bigger words, Ollie added. Luminous, magnanimous, hippopotamus. Layla shook her head. And what about the booba and the bakery? Sandra knew all that, and the woman said nothing. Good counterpoint, Theo replied. Maybe all these people on stage are working for her, Carter suggested. No, they're not, Layla answered, annoyed at herself for feeling exasperated. I think it's just easy for people to believe something is real when they need it to be, said Ridley. Exactly, Theo said. Believing in something doesn't make it automatically not real, Layla whispered. Someone in the seats behind shushed them. Layla turned and quickly apologized. So, most of the Misfits seem to think that there's some sort of trick behind this. They don't think that that Sandra is actually talking to these spirits. They're saying she's just giving out kind of vague bits of information until someone thinks of someone in their life that could be, which we know a lot of people. So they're thinking that there's a trick to this. There's not actually spirits in the room that she's talking to. But Layla really wants to believe that Sandra is the real deal, and we've seen this from her earlier in the book too. She's really reluctant to believe that this is fake. She wants to believe it's real. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that Sandra is actually talking to spirits? Or do you think it's a trick, kind of like, what Carter does? Not a bad thing, just a trick to entertain and to make people happy and smile and laugh. But a trick. Or is she actually talking to spirits? What do you think? Layla thought back to when they'd all gone to Bozo's circus and how Carter had taken them into a tent to speak with a woman called Madame Helga, who'd told them, "Alone you are weak, together you are strong." Ridley had used the quote to help them learn Morse code. The experience with Madame Helga had bonded the group differently. Blah, 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 blah. The experience with Madame Helga had bonded the group closely and made them believe that they were fated to stick together, even if they had differences of opinion. But it bothered Layla that she couldn't dismiss what Sandra was doing on the stage as easily as Ridley or Carter or Theo. Still, Layla knew there was something powerful about seeing Madame Esmeralda do her thing. She was as wonderful at predictions as Layla was at escape artistry. The proof was in the faces of the audience as they watched and listened in awe. And despite the reservations Layla was feeling, she couldn't wait to talk to her dad's old friend after the show and learn how it all worked. On the stage, only the conservative-looking couple was left standing with the psychic. Okay, the conservative-looking couple, aka this is the couple that Layla recognized from somewhere a long time ago. Madame Esmeralda grew quiet and still and serious. "A moment, audience. I am trying to speak with the other side." She walked toward the red curtain at the rear of the stage and tilted her head as if listening to the voice of another spirit. She whispered something under her breath. From the front row, Layla concentrated on the psychic's lips. She could have sworn Sandra had said something like, "I won't do it." Layla remembered hearing Sandra argue with herself in the resort's lounge the other day. Were spirits attacking her? Layla was just starting to worry that the show was about to go off the rails when, with no warning, Madame Esmeralda removed the turban from her head and threw it off the stage. 2 messy braids had been hidden underneath, and they fell to her shoulders. She wasn't Madame Esmeralda anymore. She'd transformed into Sandra again. Her star-shaped earrings swung furiously as she stared up into the spotlight, holding her fingertips to her temples. Interesting. So Layla is able to kind of tell that Sandra is saying something like, "I won't do it," to the spirits. No one. I don't really know. And she thinks back to when they had seen Sandra sitting in the lobby of the hotel the other day, distressed, upset, and she was talking to seemingly no one, saying, "I won't do it, I won't do it." And when Layla approached her and asked if everything was okay, she was like, "Oh yes, totally fine, I'll see you later," and walked off, right? So who is she talking to? Is there some, were the spirits attacking her as Layla's wondering, or is there a real person trying to get her to do something? I don't know. But so she throws off her hat, and let's see what happens. "I'm sorry," she said weakly to the couple. Everyone in the audience leaned forward in rapt attention. "There's something I must tell you, as much as it might pain me and others." The couple cringed, as if Sandra might suddenly leap at them. "You came here tonight looking for answers, did you not?" The man in the brown suit cleared his throat and wrapped his arm around his wife in the brown dress. She nodded to Sandra, who continued, "Then you won't be surprised to learn your answers are here, in this very room right now." The woman's mouth dropped open, and she wiped at a tear that was creeping from the corner of her eye. "This is about your daughter, is it not?" Sandra asked. "It is," said the man. "We lost our girl a long, long time ago." "We were so young," said the woman. "We were broke and didn't have the means to provide her for a good life. Before she was born, we agreed to give her up, but then we saw her smile." She glanced at the man, as if asking for permission to continue. He nodded. "We wanted desperately to keep her. We wanted to give her everything, treat her like a little princess, but it wasn't realistic. With the help of a trusted friend, we relinquished custody, but not a day has passed that we haven't thought about her. Every day since, we've hoped that she is well, but now we want her back." "We've always wanted her back," said the man. We've worked hard to make something of ourselves so that we could give her the life she deserves." Whispering rose up from the audience. People seemed to be wondering if this was actually part of the show. It felt so different from what had come before. Okay, so Sandra says, addresses this couple and says, "You came here for answers, correct?" And they said, "Yes." And she said, "This is about your daughter, correct?" And they said, "Yes." And this couple reveals that when they were younger, the woman had gotten pregnant, but they were poor, and didn't have enough money to take care of this child, and they loved it, but they knew that they couldn't provide for this child and keep it safe and healthy and happy, and so they had to relinquish it. I assume relinquish custody meaning maybe put it up for adoption or something like that, but basically give the child to another family that would be able to take care of it and love it and keep it happy and healthy. But they never stopped thinking about this child, their daughter, and how they love her so much, and they weren't able to take care of her then, but they've worked every day since to set themselves up so they could provide for this child and keep it happy and healthy and loved. So they're looking for their long-lost daughter, is basically what this boils down to. Who do you think their long-lost daughter is? Any ideas? I have a thought, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm not going to tell you my thought because I want you to think who you think their long-lost daughter could be. I don't know. Let's keep going. Sandra stared at the two intensely, as if she were ransacking their memories. She brought her index finger up to the center of her forehead. Closing her eyes, she asked, "Your names, please tell me." The woman spoke haltingly, glancing at her partner every few words. "Pammy and Bob Varalika. We drove an hour and a half just to see you, Madame Esmeralda." "Do you know where our girl is?" asked the man, a desperate tinge to his voice. I believe that I do," Sandra stammered nervously. "As a matter of fact, your daughter is... It was as if Sandra couldn't get the words out. "She's right here tonight." "Here?" the couple echoed in disbelief. When Sandra looked toward the magic misfits, Layla knew that she was searching for eye contact. "Was your daughter's name Layla?" Sandra asked without looking away. Layla felt as though the entire room had dropped out from underneath her. She sensed a vague pulling as Ridley grasped her wrist. The Varalikas had both turned pale. The woman, Pammy, looked faint, and the man, Bob, clutched his wife's shoulders as if to hold her up. "That's correct," said Bob. "Just like the girl who performed before you, the escape artist. But you don't mean she couldn't be." He followed Sandra's gaze to the front row. By now, loud murmurs filled the room as the crowd's agitation grew and grew. Wearing a sad look, Sandra held out her hand, her fingers trembling. "My dear Layla," she whispered, "come up and meet your birth parents." And that's the end of our chapter. What? that was an intense moment. So Layla, we know, was adopted by the Vernons, Mr. Dante Vernon and the other Mr. Vernon. Before that, she'd been left as a baby at this orphanage. Well, now Sandra and this couple on stage are claiming that they are her original parents, her birth parents, which is an intense thing to just like throw on someone. I mean, she loves the Vernons. They are her family. And now suddenly Sandra's like, well, come meet, your birth parents, who she's never met before. I mean, it's a lot. And I'm wondering how Layla's going to respond to this. Also makes me realize why Sandra thought that Mr. Dante Vernon should be there. Because this is intense. So, I don't know how Layla's going to react. I also wonder, we also have to question, is this real? Are these people really related to Layla? Or is this just another trick? I don't know. That would be really mean to play this off as a trick. So I gotta think that Sandra at least believes that these people are related to Layla. Otherwise, I don't think she would do it. But I don't know. I could be wrong. But that was definitely an intense moment. How do you think Layla's going to react? Is she going to be nervous, scared, excited, confused, happy, sad, angry? I don't know. That's big news to throw on someone. We'll see. That's a heavy moment. Well, we'll keep reading next time and find out how Layla reacts. Maybe she'll at least be able to get answers about the key that was left with her as a baby in the orphanage. I don't know. We'll continue chapter 22 next time and find out a little bit more about this tricky situation. All right, friends. See you next time. Noodles, say bye. Bye-bye.